Oh, hello there, and welcome to episode 35 of Weekly Lit. I titled this enticingly as The Battle of the Sexes and Battle of the Centuries, also known as Where King Solomon's Minds Sing, because we are going to compare and contrast a couple of different works that are 100 and probably 33 years apart and wildly divergent, and yet they share some common themes. And those two works are 1885's King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard, a Victorian adventure writer. And the second one is of recent import, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I say it's of recent import because it was a bestseller from 4 years ago that is recently made into a hit movie. And I've read both books and actually seen both movies. I should say all three movies because King Solomon's Mines has been made into at least a couple of versions of movies. 1950 and a pretty bad one in 1985. I think it was 85. But ignore the movies of King Solomon's Mines for now. We'll discuss the movie of Where the Crawdads Sing because, like I said, it's of recent vintage and has some import there, and it's a good movie. I would start by contrasting these, and again, I said there's a battle of the sexes. King Solomon's Mines has been classified as a typical boys' adventure tale that were popular, have always been popular, maybe up until recent years for a number of reasons. I don't know, but they should continue to be popular. I'm a big fan of encouraging young men and young women to read and finding things that are attractive, compelling, enticing to each audience, and they don't need to be separate. I'm not saying that there can't be some crossover. I would generally say, though, that the King Solomon's Mines has generally historically been treated as a boys' adventure novel and one for boys of all ages. So if you like Dumas or adventure stories, Michael Crichton, good rip roaring tales of adventure, or movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark with action and themes like that. Many of those go back to H. Rider Haggard as an early writer of that type of novel. Alan Quatermain was his hero in King Solomon's Mines and in subsequent books. In fact, I'm reading a bit of the second one entitled Alan Quatermain that followed this. So this would be of the nature of Tarzan, Conan the Barbarian, those pulp type adventures. But these predated those by a little bit late 19th century. And H. Rider Haggard writes with an English flair, and actually Jack London would be an American comparison of an adventure writer at about the same time, maybe a little bit after. And so H. Rider Haggard has exciting tales. They are products of their time, so there are things that some people might, not find acceptable, or most people would not find acceptable in terms of a few terms here and there. But taken into context and in the spirit in which it was written, and so that's the first contrast, is each of these books being a product of their time. I'm going to jump now to Where the Crawdads Sing. It's a 2018 novel by Delia Owens, written about, I think it's in North Carolina, the Low Country, certainly. And it's about Kaya, known as the Marsh Girl. And there is a murder mystery aspect to it. And that's set in throughout the 60s. I think the ending action culminates in the late 60s or maybe 1970. But It's about a young girl growing into being a young woman who lives in the marsh and is a naturalist, ornithologist, collects shells, studies the tides and all the animals, the flora and fauna, and but is really shunned by society, and so she is isolated, and the story is told from her point of view, and her interactions with society. So she's isolated. She turns it to her advantage in many ways, but of course, there are disadvantages as well. And as I mentioned, she's shunned by polite society. Um, Going back to King Solomon's Mines, it's a tale of civilized men traveling into what would have been known as the darkest center of Africa, unexplored Africa, where they meet up with the isolated people, aka, again, their terms, not mine, savages that would be unknown to them, or generally unknown, largely unknown uh, to the so-called civilized world. So you could realize I'm putting some air quotes around there, or using some irony in that. And so there's a bit of an inversion between these two, where one is a journey from civilization into nature and the wild, the unexplored and savagery. The other is a child who has been raised in that type of a setting, not quite as um, a little closer to society, but nevertheless really isolated by her circumstances. And so there's a bit of an inversion there between these two. And it reminded me of a quotation from Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan and other notable figures. Um, Civilized men are more discourteous than savages because they know they can be impolite without having their skulls split. uh, Found that to be true. We see that certainly borne out in where the crawdads sing. And in fact, my experience, crawdads do not sing. Actually, the meaning of that is go far away. Go, what they say, go where the crawdads sing. It means, get away, far away from here, out beyond where the crawdads sing, because they don't sing. So it's kind of a, go out to Never Never Land or get away from here type of saying. Anyway, uh, the so the nature and uh, predatory aspect of nature is afoot in both these stories. So very much a common theme, and how morality, particularly in Where the Crawdads Sing, is the law of the jungle, or the law of the predator, which would seemingly be more implicit in King Solomon's Mines, comes to be revealed as also applying in a modern day novel very effectively in Where the Crawdads Sing. And particularly if you've read it or seen the movie, you can figure out what I'm talking about there pretty easily, as far as the predatory nature. So the both books, I'm very pleased with both books. And I'll give you a little excerpt from Where the Crawdads Sing. Um, just a short paragraph here, just to give you the beauty of Delia Owens' language. And she herself worked as a naturalist. I may not be entirely accurate calling her a naturalist, but I believe she worked in the wild. And uh, there's some issues with her husband, or now ex-husband, but husband at the time, driving off poachers. And if they're poaching, they get what they deserve, as far as I'm concerned. But uh, again, a parallel with King Solomon's Mines, which involves uh, elephant hunters and exploitation of nature. But anyway, this is from Where the Crawdads Sing. Sometimes she heard night sounds she didn't know, or jumped from lightning too close. But whenever she stumbled, it was the land who caught her. Until at last, at some unclaimed moment, the heart pain seeped away, like water into sand, still there, but deep. Kaya laid her hand upon the breathing, wet earth, and the marsh became her mother. So there's a lot going on there. It may sound a little corny, but it's meaningful and it's very well written. And she's dealing with the loss of her mother, and at a young age, and again takes solace in the wild, and that's both figurative and literal in that sense. Now going to H. Rider Haggard and King Solomon's Mines, if I can unlock my text here. It's an enjoyable read. Again, very much of its time, but it would remind. It just has that English elegance to it and wit. And so I'll read an excerpt here from chapter 2 before the expedition sets off, but sort of the setup of it to give you an idea of the tone and adventurous spirit. So a little more lighthearted than Where the Crawdads Sing. So chapter 2, The Legend of Solomon's Mines. What was it that you heard about my brother's journey at Bamangwato? Said Sir Henry, as I paused to fill my pipe before answering Captain Good. I heard this, I answered, and I have never mentioned it to a soul till today. I heard that he was starting for Solomon's Mines. Solomon's Mines, ejaculated both my hearers at once. Where are they? I don't know, I said. I know where they are said to be. I once saw the peaks of the mountains that border them, but there was 130 miles of desert between me and them. And I am not aware that any white man ever got across it save one. But perhaps the best thing I can do is tell you the legend of Solomon's Mines as I know it. You passing your word not to reveal anything, I tell you, without my permission. Do you agree to that? I have my reasons for asking it. Sir Henry nodded, and Captain Good replied, Certainly, certainly. Well, I began, as you may guess, in a general way, elephant hunters are a rough set of men, and don't trouble themselves with much beyond the facts of life and the ways of Kaffirs. But here and there you meet a man who takes the trouble to collect traditions from the natives and tries to make out a little piece of the history of this dark land. It was such a man as this who first told me the legend of Solomon's Mines, now a matter of nearly 30 years ago. It was when I was on my first elephant hunt in the Matabele country. His name was Evans, and he was killed next year, poor fellow, by a wounded buffalo, and lies buried near the Zambezi Falls. I was telling Evans one night, I remember, of some wonderful workings I had found while hunting kudu and eland in what was now the Leidenburg district of the Transvaal. I see they have come across the workings again lately in prospecting for gold, but I knew of them years ago. There is a great wide wagon road cut out of the solid rock and leading to the mouth of the working or gallery. Inside the mouth of this gallery are stacks of gold quartz piled up ready for crushing, which shows that the workers, whoever they were, must have left in a hurry. And about 20 paces in the gallery is built across, and a beautiful bit of masonry it is. Aye, said Evans, but I will tell you a queerer thing than that. And he went on to tell me how he had found in the far interior a ruined city, which he believed to be the Ophir of the Bible. And by the way, other more learned men have said the same thing since poor Evans's time. I remember, listening open-eared to all of these. For I was young at the time, and this story of an ancient civilization, of the treasure which these old Jewish or Phoenician adventurers used to extract from a country long since lapsed into the darkest barbarism, took a great hold upon my imagination, when suddenly he said, Lad, did you ever hear of the Suleiman Mountains up in the northwest of the Mashkin-Colombe country? I told him I never had. Ah, well, he said, that was where Solomon really hid his mines. His diamond mines, I mean. How do you know that? I asked. Know it? Why, what is Suleiman but a corruption of Solomon? And besides, an old Isanusi witch doctor up in the Monica country told me all about it. She said that the people who lived across these mountains were a branch of the Zulus, speaking a dialect of Zulu, but finer and bigger men even. There lived among them great wizards who had learned their art from the white men when all the world was dark, and who had the secret of a wonderful mine of bright stones. And it goes on from there, including a man they call the Portuguese, who is stumbling forward in skeletal form, with his last words offering a rag of a map and the location of the mines and so forth. So it gets off to a wonderful start and goes from there with twists and turns and so forth. So much more of an adventure tale than Where the Crawdads Sing. That's more of a little more of a morality tale. But both stories, again, almost a century and a half apart, but enjoyable. Uh, I enjoyed them this summer, and I thought it'd be kind of a nice touching off point. So, again, if you're looking for a boys' adventure tale, boys of all ages, H. Rider Haggard's King Solomon's Mines, and for a typically more female audience, although I've found it to be quite a good read and a compelling movie, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. So feel free to comment and make your opinions known. If you've, and you can even comment about King Solomon's Mines movies if you like. But I will not vouch for those, although they could be entertaining. Yeah, tell me what you think. If you have any other recommendations, I love adventure tales of all sorts, and we'll be getting to more of those in the future. Until then, thank you for your time and read harder.